Hey, this is Lewis from SoFly, and in this video I'm going to show you how to create a gradient background header and hero section. So to get started, I'm just going to go to Fundamentals, add a div, and this div is going to contain the gradient. So you can get a lot of good gradients at uigradients.com. You just scroll through the gradients and find one that you like. Okay, this one's pretty cool. So you click Get CSS Code, and you can just copy and paste the last line. You don't need all the lines anymore with modern browsers. It's kind of the old way of doing it. Now you don't really need all the lines. And then for the div, just go to the CSS and JavaScript tab, CSS, and paste in that background. And that is going to give you that background. Now we're going to add two sections to the page, one section for our header and one for the actual hero section. So in the header, I'm just going to go ahead and add a logo image. So I'll add an image. I'm going to copy my logo image URL. And we're going to float this image to the left. And I'll add some padding on the section itself. Say 20 pixels on the top and the bottom. And then for the width here, we'll just shrink this down. Let's say 90. Maybe a little bigger. Yeah, 120 looks pretty good there. And then for the menu itself, I'm going to add a div. And we're going to float this div on the right. This is going to have our menu links. And then I'll add a link inside this div. And I'll call it main menu link. Add the class. And we'll make it white. Let's duplicate this a few times, edit the text, we'll say home, product tour, demos, support, and buy now. We'd have a couple more links here. Documentation, video library, support, and buy now. Okay, so for each of these links, well, since we have a class apply, we just have to do it one time. We'll set the margin to sort of separate them from each other. We'll change the font size. We're using Open Sans. I think on the site right now we're using Open Sans and Source Sans Pro. Yeah, we'll leave the fonts as is. Let's go ahead and make these links all caps. So we'll just go to typography, capitalize, or sorry, uppercase. And let's add some letter spacing. Make it slightly more readable. And then we're going to go to this entire div, since it has a dark background with light text, and set the WebKit font smoothing to anti-alias. That'll make the text look a little bit better. Let's play around with different weights here. Maybe a weight of, weight of 600 looks a little bit better. Instead of having the margin on the right, we should have the margin on the left so we don't get that extra space on the right side there. Okay, that's better. And maybe this is too many links. Okay, that's better. And we don't really need to tweak the menu because it's already centered right now. Let's turn this Buy Now link into a Buy Now button. So I'll just add another class to it. We'll just call this Menu Button. And we'll add a border around it of 1 pixel, solid, white. And then we'll add some padding, say 6 pixels on the top and the bottom, and 10 pixels on the left and the right. And we'll add a border radius of, let's see, maybe 1, 2, 3 pixels. Okay, that looks pretty good. And we'll add a slightly transparent background. So we'll go full white and then just turn the opacity down to maybe 3%. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now it's not quite aligned correctly though, because this button, we added 6 pixels of padding on the button. So we can just go back to the menu bar and add some negative margin to get this centered with the logo. Okay, that looks pretty good, pretty centered. So there is our header. Now let's go ahead and do the hero section. So for the hero section is now active. I'll just put, say, 75 pixels of padding on the top, and then we'll add a heading. We'll make this white, Source Sans Pro. Let's make it thinner. Let's put some padding on the bottom of the section just so we can see what's going on for now. I think I'm going to remove it later, though, because we're going to put a screenshot at the bottom. So we'll center everything in the section. Let's make this bigger and thinner. It's 300 weight, 48. Visual website design software for WordPress. Okay, that looks pretty good. And now we will duplicate the heading, turn it into subheading. I'm going to change the tag to H2, make the weight 500, change the text size to 32, and make it somewhat transparent. Maybe we want a little more space between these. You could use line height. I'm just going to use margin because I'm lazy. Okay, there we go. Now we got our headline, our subheadline, and now what we're going to do is put a call to action button below these and then a screenshot. So for the button, I'll go ahead and add a link, text link, and we'll just call this CTA Button. Text is going to be white. Let's put a lot of space below this subheading. Let's make it a little smaller. Maybe that's a little bit too big. Should be a little more bold. A little smaller. Yeah, that looks a little better. Okay, let's put 50 pixels of margin below this. And then we're just going to have a Buy Now button with a 1 pixel solid border, white. Let's make this a relatively big button. So we'll start with 20 pixels of padding on the top and the bottom, and 32 pixels on the left and right. Get it now. Yeah, that's not quite big enough. Right, let's try 30, 48. Let's make the font a little bit bigger. 2. Maybe it'd be better if it was wider, not quite as tall. Oh, yeah, that looks pretty good. 25 pixels of padding on the top, 60 on the bottom. Longer text says get oxygen now. And we'll add a 3 pixel border radius to this as well. And let's add a little bit of opacity on the background. So we'll make the background white and then just turn this down until it's just barely white. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now let's drop in a screenshot of the product. So we will add an image. Let me upload the image. I already took the screenshot earlier. There's the screenshot. Now we want this to be 100% width. And actually, no, we're not going to use an image for this. Let me delete that. We're going to use a div and set this as the background because we want to crop out the bottom portion of the image. So we'll delete that, add a div, go to background image. We'll use this, and now we can just manually make the div as tall as we want. So first, I'll remove that 75 pixels of padding from the container. Go to the div, we'll add 50 pixels on the top. And then let's just control the height of this until we get it looking how we want. So that's 300 pixels. Okay, 472 looks pretty good. And let's add a border radius around this image. Let's just say 4 pixels on the top left and the top right, and then it's going to be flat along the bottom. So 0 on the bottom. Oops, here we go. 4 on the top, left and right, 0 on the bottom. Okay, there we go. And let's fade this image out a little bit. So we'll just go opacity 0.9. And that makes it sort of blend in with the background a little bit better. Okay, there we go. There is our gradient hero section in Oxygen. Let's take a look and see how it looks on the front end. Okay, pretty good, pretty professional looking.